Welcome, dear friends, for this sutta study, which is part of our series on practicing for peace. We will be discussing the Mettāsahagatasutta, which Bhikkhu Bodhi translates as accompanied by loving kindness. Do you have the page number in the wisdom book? 1607 in the Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation by Wisdom Publications. I want to warn you that this week I must depart from this class exactly at 2:30 and not later. So if you have something to say, put your hand up and speak quickly instead of waiting until the very end. Okay, let's jump right into reading the sutta together. Oops, wrong one. Here we go. At one time, the Buddha was staying in the land of the Kolyans, where they have a town called Halidavasana. Then several mendicants robed up in the morning and taking their bowls and robes, entered Halidavasana for alms. Then it occurred to them, it's too early to wander for alms in Halidavasana. Why don't we visit the monastery of the wanderers of other religions? So these mendicants were disciples of the Buddha. They went to the monastery of the wanderers of other religions and exchanged greetings with the wanderers there. When the greetings and polite conversation were over, they sat down to one side. The wanderers said to them, Reverends, the ascetic Gotama teaches his disciples like this. Come, mendicants, give up these 5 hindrances, corruptions of the heart that weaken wisdom, and meditate, spreading a heart full of love to one direction, and to the second, and to the third, and to the fourth. In the same way, above, below, across, everywhere, all around, spread a heart full of love to the whole world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. Right away, we can see that, or we can anticipate, because we know that this is also a teaching of Buddha and the others and these other religions, that this practice is in common. It's not a unique Buddhist teaching so far. So the first instruction here is to give up the 5 hindrances, corruptions of the heart that weaken wisdom. You may say, well, that's a tall order. Easier said than done. Sometimes a person who is seriously really trying to develop meditation could spend an entire month, an entire 3 months, a whole year, really striving to develop themselves in meditation, and still find that they're beset by the hindrances of ill will, sensual desire, restlessness and worry, sloth and torpor, and skeptical doubt. We can talk a little bit more about that later, but the main significance of seeing it right here at the beginning is that in all of the descriptions of jhana or sama samadhi, it always describes the first jhana as being the situation where one is secluded from sensual desire, secluded from unwholesome states of mind in order to enter the first jhana. And then one experiences the powerful bliss based on seclusion. So in this case, because this practice is said, give up the hindrances and then do this meditation, this signifies that it's a meditation to be done within sama samadhi or within the jhana practice. Metta can be preliminary to jhana and also within jhana. But that's what they're referring to in this case. These mendicants continued. Meditate spreading a heart full of compassion to one direction, to the second, to the third, to the fourth. In the same way, above, below, across, everywhere, all around. Spread a heart full of compassion to the whole world. Abundant, expansive, limitless, free from enmity and ill will. Here, I might comment that the absence of enmity and free will is sort of the definition of metta or loving kindness. And the commentators say that compassion, rejoicing, and equanimity are special cases of loving kindness. There are specific types of loving kindness, but all of them are within loving kindness. And that's why they say that this phrase is here. And then the third is meditate spreading a heart full of rejoicing to one direction and to the second and to the third and to the fourth. In the same way, above, below, across, everywhere, all around, spread a heart full of rejoicing to the whole world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free from enmity and free from ill will. And then fourth, meditate spreading a heart full of equanimity to one direction and to the second and to the third and to the fourth. In the same way, above, below, across, everywhere, all around, they spread a heart full of equanimity to the whole world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. They say, we too teach our disciples in this same way. And then they repeat the entire instruction. What then is the difference between the ascetic Gautama's teaching and instruction and ours? Those mendicants neither approved nor dismissed the statement of the wanderers of other religions. They got up from their seat thinking, we will learn the meaning of this statement from the Buddha himself. I think this is a good moment to pause. Okay, Ananaya.
In Bhikkhu Bodhi's version, there's a note, and I've gone through this, we've done this sutta before, but I hadn't really seen this piece or whatever, but the note says that when they say they don't have any original, they don't have the other sects, according to S.B. Kane, that's one of the sources, either, I forget which, I have to look it up in the front, but it's one of an accepted source. anyway, that they do not, these other sects do not have any original teachings on the abandonment of the five hindrances or the development of the divine abodes, but have plagiarized them from the Buddha. And I had not actually heard that previously. And another note says also there's two notes on that one. Anyway, so I thought that was, that's definitely worth considering, that it isn't just that yes, they do this, but the practices aren't original to them.
Yes. This is in the commentary that claims that the other sects resort to the Buddha's teaching. However, contrary to the contrary, the scholar Rupert Gethin points out the sutta doesn't go as far as the commentary.
Right.
It only stresses the difference between the two ways of teachings. And it would be possible, in my humble opinion, that loving kindness, even the thing about the other if you consider, like, what are the unique teachings of the Buddha? He taught non-self. He taught the Eightfold Noble Path, and he taught mindfulness. And these are some of the teachings that, when the Buddha speaks about him, he specifically says that these were never known before. I discovered them. But he doesn't say that about the Brahma Viharas. And in fact, he says that later you'll see a person who practices the Brahma Viharas without penetrating to the highest, to liberation, can be reborn in a heavenly realm. So, yeah, I think it's interesting to think about, though, how it can be beneficial, because we often speak to people who are not Buddhists, and we might sometimes speak to people who are interested in Buddhism, but they don't fully understand Buddhism. And this teaching could be really a skillful way to bring them into the Dhamma, because of its being so universal. Now I'll call on the Pasadi Vihara, whichever one of you will speak.
I've been listening to Bhante Sujato, and he's been doing a lot of research into the early religions. And it may be actually Brahminical that the Brahma Viharas weren't necessarily, not maybe the way that Lord Buddha teaches them, but when you think of it, it's Brahma Vihara is like the dwelling of the Brahma God. So to elevate oneself to that state. So maybe they were doing some of these practices, believing that this is elevating themselves to that divine state, the divine abiding, and that they would unite with Brahma. So I don't know that, the commentaries may be off, or they, it may be what's unique to the Buddhist teaching is exactly how he was teaching what we practice today. But there's also quite a bit of variation in how it's taught. So So they were seeing that these wanderers were seeing that they had some practice, and whether that was plagiarized and they didn't realize it, or not, that they were doing that practice. So they're they're trying to see how to distinguish themselves, like, or maybe they were just saying, I don't see any difference.
They were saying, I don't see any difference.
Yeah. So anyway, but there is some discussion that in Brahmanism, that they did have these practices of the 4 divine abodes.
Yeah. I'm going to say something and then invite Patipada to join. My comment is that we see again and again in numerous different situations where persons have a spiritual path and a spiritual practice, and the Buddha doesn't tell them, throw away your religion and take up this religion. Instead, he adds additional layers of significance and meaning and depth to the things that they are already practicing to transform whatever the other tradition is, and sort of standing on what a person already has by way of their spiritual practice, then they can come bring it into the fullest level. So in that way, Buddhism was, there are many teaching stories that were done like that. So I don't really know that it's the commentary. It's that it's necessary to say that these the other ascetics were plagiarizing from the Buddha. Patipada, what do you think?
Growing up in Hinduism with a grandfather who was a Hindu priest and taught from the Vedas, the Sastras, the Ramayana, the Bhagavad Gita, learning from that, hearing these words, I think it's really expresses the perception of a misunderstanding, I think. I don't think any of this is blatantly wrong. I think a person can only share from the foundation they have and the body of knowledge they know. And so when I listen to these interpretations, that's what I keep in mind. This person did not grow up in the Eastern tradition like I did, and they didn't so their perceptions, their words, their understanding would express their own lived experience. And so I find when I listen to Buddhism teaches me and reminds me of teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas. And these are such ancient texts before the Buddha, and the Buddha learned from them. So I think sometimes the expression of the Western view can come across as excluding the foundation of the Buddha. And so I listen through a different lens in that regard. These teachings are not new to me.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Just to be very solid with what this fundamental teaching is, there is the idea that it is boundless. And in that way, the divine loving kindness, or the spiritual path of loving kindness, is different from an ordinary common householder's practice. It's quite normal to be generous and kind with your own family or with your own relatives. Even to be kind and loving with your own country, or to be kind and loving with people who look like you. And so in all of these ways, it's quite normal to practice kindness that has a certain limit, so that there's kind of a bubble, and the people on the inside of the bubble benefit from our love, our kindness, our consideration, and then the people who are outside the bubble we don't consider in the same way. So that way, the loving kindness like that is boundless. It's not a Brahmavihara. Yesterday, I was teaching the group about the Brahmaviharas, and in the discussion, a couple of people very honestly and openly admitted that they are not able to extend loving kindness towards the enemy. They can have loving kindness for everybody in the world except for their enemy. They don't love their enemy. And so that's a kind of an honesty, isn't it? There's some visitors come. Welcome to join us. We're speaking about a sutta. Would you like to sit and listen? Okay, great. If you want a chair instead of a cushion, you may bring a chair over, or else you may sit on the sit here. Yes, can. Okay. Yeah, so the boundless, limitless aspect is very important, super important. And then this idea of spreading the heart full of love. So you could say that like intention is coming from the heart more so than from the intellect. And so that's like the intention or the good wish for a loving kindness, and going around the different directions is a method. It's a meditation method. Kindness is that intention for the safety, happiness, and success of beings, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of what kind of being they are, regardless of anything about the situation. You just wish for them to be happy. You can compare that to a parent upon learning that they've conceived a child. You don't really know anything about the child yet. You don't know their gender, if they're going to be healthy, or if they're going to be difficult, if they're going to be smart or stupid, if they're going to be good or bad. You just don't know anything about them. But nevertheless, you so strongly want for them to be happy more than anything. Then the compassion is when this kindness becomes aware of suffering, encounters dukkha, then you want beings to come out of, be able to find their way out of dukkha, to come to the end of suffering. When beings experience success, which for us especially is spiritual success, you could say that this rejoicing, this sympathetic joy, mudita, you could say if somebody gets a promotion at work, or if they win the lottery, or something like that, if they're really happy about it, you don't need to, you wouldn't be jealous. And you might even acknowledge, say, oh, what happiness you feel because you won the lottery. May you never lose your happiness. But we know that it's a different kind of happiness. Is the happiness along our path of practice, and that's what we really want them to gain. And whatever they gain, we think may they not lose whatever they've gained. And then the equanimity, which we're talking about that this morning, is you could say metta, compassion, and sympathetic joy are kind of an intention, a wish. But we may know that regardless of what we wish for, things might turn out otherwise, or they will turn out otherwise than what we wish for. And equanimity is able to be with that limitation. So you don't have to be anxious or stressful because you want them to get better, but they don't get better. Or you want them to not lose what they gained, but they do lose what they gained. Metta equanimity has the aspect of clarity and evenly seeing things as they really are, in a way that is very close to being able to apprehend the profound wisdom truths of this teaching. Because you have equanimity, then you're able to see clearly because of not being disturbed. So that's a little bit, in case anybody had a doubt about, or a question about the basic outline of these 4 Brahma Viharas. Is there something I've missed that I should add? So John,
I think, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I think that we have to remember that there were many Buddhas before this one. So we have to take this teaching within the context of that. Because the other Buddhas taught the same things. Each Buddha teaches the same thing, the same practice, the same realization. And
Yes.
so in India, the past Buddhas, there are teachings that are recorded there, but that is not the focus of study in the West. The focus of study in the West is this most recent Buddha. So I think the context is very important.
I believe that as far as it goes, that even someone who's not even in the Indic traditions, somebody's in the Judeo-Christian or the Abrahamic religions, or many other faith systems, can recognize something, definitely a value and something that's compatible
Absolutely.
with the great religions of the world.
I believe, yes, I agree with you.
Okay, I'm going to read onwards, and now we're going to come to the part where the Buddha begins to put it in the more distinctive context. So they want to learn the meaning of the statement from the Buddha himself. Then after the meal, when they returned from alms round, they went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down on one side, and told him what had happened. And now the whole lesson, the whole meditation is repeated in the original long version of the teachings. And the Buddha replies, mendicants, when the wanderers say this, you should say to them, how is the heart's release by love developed? What is its destination, apex, fruit, and culmination? How is the heart's release by compassion developed? What is its destination, apex, fruit, and end? How is the heart's release by rejoicing developed? What is its destination, apex, fruit, and end? How is the heart's release by equanimity developed? What is its destination, apex, fruit, and end? And he asserts, questioned like this, the wanderers of other religions would be stumped, and addition would get frustrated. Why is that? Because they're out of their element. So the heart's release by love in the Pali is called Mettā Lovingkindness. It's not the most basic part of the teachings, but we do see in quite a few different suttas speaking about Ceto Vimutti, which is a sublime, elevated, healing, beneficial state that can be reached in meditation, but not that's necessarily the same thing as obtaining nibbana. But as a kind of a practical matter, through means of different kinds of meditation, the Buddha recognized different kinds of heart liberation, vimokkha. And so then we'll see at the end of this sutta that he gives a sort of a systematic presentation, putting them in context. The Buddha says, I don't see anyone in this world with its gods, Maras, Brahmas, this population with its ascetics and Brahmins, its gods and humans, who could provide a satisfying answer to these questions, except for the realized one or his disciple or someone who has heard it from them. And now comes the first one. How is the heart's release by love developed? What is its destination, apex, fruit, and end? It's when a mendicant develops the heart's release by love together with the awakening factors of mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity, which rely on seclusion fading away and cessation, and ripen as letting go. Whew, that's a mouthful. I don't want to hog the stage too much. Would Venerable Nyanaka or Ayasuvijana, would you like to say something about the awakening factors and what they signify? That's called the Bojjhangas.
It's unmuted.
Okay. That's a big topic. But these are factors for awakening and of awakening. So they could either be what we're working towards for awakening, or that whole cascading outward that leads to the full awakening. As it's like the causal factors that are unfolding as a person completely is liberated, is freed. And unremitting mindfulness is the first of the Bojjhangas. And if we're continuously cultivating the Brahma Viharas, it's a form of mindfulness. So this may be one way that they intersect. And then investigating that exalted state of metta. If we've gotten metta to a jhanic level, And it's expansive, immeasurable. And then as we're exiting the jhana, we start to investigate it. This is the investigation of principles, or the Dhamma Vijaya. And so then, so that's the awakening factor, examining this. Oh, okay, this is impermanent. It's not self, it's not mine. And then clinging to it is dukkha. So, investigating it. And then one is energetic, so that the virya arises. The investigation brings up the virya and the piti, and then it calms into pasadi, and samadhi deepens, I think. It must deepen. I don't know. And then the equanimity. So these are the all based on knowledge, or the development of knowledge, actually, as well as the deepening of the calm. So that's my
Rick.
take on it. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much. I know that we have some friends for whom the Factors of Awakening has been the trademark of their personal practice, the thing that's their point of reference, so that, like in coming to know, like, what is my state of mind at any particular moment, whether entering into meditation or coming out of meditation, that they may have studied and reflected about this particular list, and they could see, very clearly that investigation of principles, that seeing impermanence, that there was a moment that really shone forth in my reflection, and that based on that there was a rising of energy, and so they see that they can see the two things and see how they're interconnected, and likewise knowing what they have, or what, like, I've come so far, but then the next part of it I don't really have, or I don't have it today, or something like that, and then thinking about how to work with their inner cultivation, or directing their practice in order to move along according to this sequence. So it's a very helpful sequence. You could spend an entire 3-month retreat, or even 3 years, or even 30 years learning and completely developing about the factors of awakening.
Thank you. So that would be factors for the
Yes.
awakening, for the process of, and then I guess the gradual path would be that the more and more freedom would be developed as one cultivates these, and that's beautiful, that awareness of each factor as it is being lifted up by the previous one, or brought to arising from the previous one.
Yeah. The next end of the sentence is also tremendously important. It says that this, what they're developing, the heart's released by love, is together with these factors, which rely on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and ripen as letting go. Seclusion starts with being secluded from the distractions of the village, and being in the solitude of a meditation place. Or it may be that the mind is secluded from the hindrances and defilements, the inner negativities of the mind are temporarily blocked out, so there's a seclusion that way. Or then at the highest level, if one has realized about non-self, that any craving or clinging to existence drops out. And so then there's a seclusion from becoming. So those are three kinds of seclusion that are mentioned. With seclusion, to whatever extent it's developed, there's the fading away of lust, or you could say the fading away of emotional reactivity. And then there's the cessation of dukkha, the end of suffering. And again, in my idea, it's not 100% that this means all the dukkha has just disappeared completely and one is an arahant. I know that if there's some particular, like a strong opinion or something that I was clinging to when it was making me miserable, if I let go of that one thing, to the extent I let go of one thing, my misery over that one thing has disappeared. And so one can experience these things before being fully realized. You can realize this cessation of dukkha can be realized. And then when it says it ripens as letting go, that's referring to letting go of the taints or the deepest level of craving, the craving for sensual desire for becoming or non-becoming, or the those taints. And so then when one has let go, letting go means that you're not going to pick it up again. So if it's something you just put down temporarily, and a few minutes later you're going to pick it up again, that doesn't mean that it's not ripened as letting go. So ripening as letting go means some part of your basic tendency of clinging has been gone, and it's not going to come back. So that's my understanding of that. And I think this is a good time to pause for questions, because this sutta is it's a very profound sutta with a lot of meat in just a few words. So it's useful to understand. So I'd welcome any questions or comments about what we just mentioned. Then I'm going, okay, Aya.
I love the way you're talking about how these factors that are seen as sequential just before like full awakening, how that they can be developed and we can see them, like the cessation. You're talking about the cessation of dukkha, even if we're able to let go just bit by bit. Some things we're seeing unwholesome tendencies, and I realize I'm actually free of that. It's not arising again. But to a certain extent, or maybe we have let it go. But I heard that the vosaga, that relinquishment or letting go, that there's well, you can see in the dictionary, it also means giving, like physically giving, because when you're being generous and giving to another person, you're relinquishing something that you have. Even if you went to the store and purchased something and gave it to somebody else, you're relinquishing some of your wealth in order to purchase it. But you're giving. So that act of giving is supporting your ability to let go. I mean, on a different, not the complete letting go, but to be giving of yourself materially, or of your time, just to spend time with people, listen to people, help people. That is letting go to a certain extent, or it's self-clinging. So it's a kind of like developing a muscle or something. You get stronger, but so it's in the line of what Ayasopana was saying about just realizing that that's fading away of craving. I'm not doing it as I'm not as attached to sensual pleasures as I used to be. I see that. I'm not seeking that out.
Could I still do it?
Yeah. So then it is a gradual path, but I think with the awakening factors, there's a point where there's this critical mass, and then it all kind of cascades, and then we really are liberated. It's not like bit by bit or gradual, but all that work that we're doing along the way is contributing to that, be building up the critical mass and being able to just completely let go. So
beautiful. I love it. Thank you.
I just wanted to build on what Ayasopana was saying. Thank you, Aya.
Yeah.
Did you have anything you wanted to share?
Oh, well, I would focus on that each of these enlightenment factors, in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, I like the way pairs it, says accompanied by loving kindness, accompanied by compassion, accompanied by. And so each of the factors is developed with kind of, I feel like it's this field of metta. So it's a disposition.
Yeah.
And if I'm abiding in this disposition that is expansive, then when I cultivate each of the enlightenment factors, it's I like to do so we've got the 3, and then we've got mindfulness. So there's 7. And so each of these, as they balance each other out, the container they're within is the Brahma Viharas. And this system, this kind of body-mind system, is filled with something that, for me, is deeply nourishing and sustainable. So then, as in the sutta, it then begins to turn toward the dispassion, and it turns into, we'll see, going into like a subha practices. The world system, the body-mind system I'm abiding in is perpetuating a right intention. So I have the tools to stick with it and actually do the realizations and gain the insights, because I'm not depleted. I'm constantly nourished by the Brahma Viharas.
I have to tell you that Venerable Nyānika was previously a computer scientist and is easily able to work with a table or a matrix that has 1,000 columns and 1,000 rows and 7 different layers.
Yeah,
so,
this multidimensional.
This multidimensional thing. And it does remind me, when we see the sutta, if you looked at the way, if you filled in all the places where there's an ellipsis in the English, if you filled it all in, like the same refrain is coming back, like in the context, in a different context. So that it's like a multidimensional web with, I couldn't tell you how many, but maybe 500 different crossing points. And if you were doing this as a meditation practice, you could like stop on each crossing point of, so this is the factor of energy related to seclusion, related to compassion.
Yeah, and it's a highly stable network.
Okay, a highly stable network. There is a one of the books in the it's in the Pali Canon. It's not commentarial, but it's not very. This is the teachings of Sariputta, and he has a loving kindness meditation that's about 40 pages long. That is just reading out all of the different cross combinations of loving kindness. And I am not strong enough minded to like memorize it and be able to like recite it as a feat of memory with all the different combinations. But just to relax and listen to the same thing over and over again in different combinations is a way of, I don't know, building something up in the mind. So that is one way that you can take a sutta like this and make it into a meditation, just to reflect this combination, this combination, this combination, this combination, this combination, and make that into a practice. That is one way of reflecting.
But it's a highly embodied. I mean, I was just concerned that
Yeah.
It's a each whatever node you are in that network. How do you know it? You know it here.
Okay.
And the knowing is not an intellectual exercise of going through all of the permutations. It's in a embodied presence within whatever permutation you're in. And when you're in there, you can begin to see, oh, I don't really have so much energy. So then you move closer into the energy mode, but it's an embodied. Someone the other day, I'd have to look at my board, a mentalometer. But what is your mentalometer to know your mind state? It's your body.
Yes. Thank you.
I love it also that there's the idea of a basis, like you're talking about the Brahma Viharas being the basis, supporting the awakening, the Bojjhangas, the awakening factor. So it's like holding, lifting it up or holding it, or but then all mutually supporting one another. That's a
Let's read on a little further. There's yet another dimension to consider. Now we come to 5 thoughts.
Right. Yes,
if they wish, may I meditate perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive. That's what they do. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive. That's what they do. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive and the repulsive. That's what they do. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive and the unrepulsive. That's what they do. If they wish, may I meditate staying equanimous, mindful, and aware, rejecting both the repulsive and the unrepulsive. That's what they do. So now we're on to the different kinds of feelings or objects that tend to go towards these different kinds of feelings. Looking around like that as a way of overcoming preferences and not having a preference for that which is unrepulsive, or either one, but just seeing them all in a kind of a neutral light as being just simply feelings. Bhikkhu Bodhi's note is saying that one who abides in loving kindness can easily apply the mind to a beautiful color kasina and obtain a beautiful liberation. So that's like the unrepulsive. As someone who abides in compassion is seeing the danger in attachment to form. And because of seeing the danger, they see that what is repulsive. But the main thing is that if one is feelings, pleasant, unpleasant feeling, and then the perception associated with that where something is labeled or perceived as being repulsive and unrepulsive because of the feeling that you get from it. This is what makes us a slave to our emotional reactivity, which is ultimately is the engine of going around and around on samsara, is running away from what we think is repulsive, what's a danger to our life, and running towards what we think is unrepulsive or what is safe or supportive to our life. And to the extent that we're still bound by having set reactions, we are in a kind of like in a trap, running on that wheel, in a way like being enslaved. But then if there's able to be a level of detachment, then you can just see what it is, and you're not compelled either way. You're just able to see things as they are. So then when say an unpleasant feeling comes along, an uninstructed person could have a perception of something repulsive. Like if you see a tiger, coming down the road towards you, and if you're afraid of tigers, and then you would see it as a monster. But then in a different kind of a circumstance, where you don't feel threatened in that way. Maybe you're in a zoo and there's a fence between you and the lion, and so then you don't get that unpleasant feeling, and so then you don't get a perception of a tiger as being repulsive. Instead, you see it as beautiful. See, so the perception that you get is very much depending on the kind of feeling tone that's present, which is just coming because of causes and conditions, and so then if you can question, always question the perceptions. Is that really true or is it really not true? And until finally this the network of compulsion breaks up and breaks apart, and there's no more compulsion left anymore, and one is able to at least see external things with a lot of freedom. And then you can kind of like choose in a way, like say if something is like morally unskillful, if it's an evil, unwholesome karma that's going to cause harm to oneself and to another, then if you've got that kind of freedom, you can still see it clearly. And you can still like make a wise choice not to undertake that evil karma because you can foresee the result of it. But you're not being compulsive about it because you've gained a level of detachment or separation in terms of just evaluating or just fabricating perceptions based on the feeling. That's my understanding, and I will invite others to add or correct.
Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really beautiful. I love the your explanation of that. The training and seeing the subha asubha, that and then ending up in equanimity. I mean, you've explained it in a particular way that in order to accomplish that, it's like a high. When I've looked at it's in the commentaries that it's very high level of accomplishment to be able to do that, switching back and forth very easily, so that to be able in our daily life to be able to work with that is an excellent mind training. And there are these trainings that asubha is translated as repulsive, but subha is beautiful. So sometimes it's translated as non-beautiful. So if you even set your mind, instead of kind of setting it up with the idea of repulsiveness, then it already starts to, for me, to start to balance it out. And a lot of it's, like you were saying, our perception of something. But the training is to see something you see as beautiful, like another human being that may be attractive, and start looking inside of the person, like the looking at their organs or something like that, so realizing, yes, everyone's made of these components or something. So it's kind of like to see that both sides of an object, that like a human being shouldn't be an object, obviously, of lust. But if we see that arising, we could say, okay, this we're all composed of these various parts. Even thinking about our own bones and teeth and things like that. And it's meant to balance, not to really make ourselves repulsed or. So I appreciate the way you explained it. It's like a really balanced way of approaching it. Just seeing that pull and push, that attractive and unattractive things, and it's all perceptive. It's all perception. I like the tiger. The tiger is not in the cage. It certainly is not attractive. Thank you, Aye.
Okay. So we can go on. Now this next section is a bit technical, and I'm going to try to make it not technical. And this is in the we not want to put this in the context of the comparison between the Buddhist system and the other religion system. He says, the apex of the heart's release by metta is the beautiful. For a mendicant who has not penetrated to a higher freedom. So if one has not obtained the liberation by wisdom, or the liberation through samadhi, which is the same thing as enlightenment. If you've not obtained enlightenment, you can obtain these other kinds of release, which lead to, in Buddhist cosmology, they can lead to being reborn in a corresponding realm, or experiencing a corresponding kind of heart's release. So the sutta in what the commentary says is that the four jhanas, which are called the fine material level of meditation, is the same thing as this liberation by the beautiful. So practicing the four jhanas is a beautiful, blissful, delightful state, which is still not separated from the material world. So one would be able to experience being like the body, physical body being permeated with tranquility and ease. And one can experience then this beautiful liberation. The commentary is associated with the color kasina, which is meditating on a pure color object, which is not so much emphasized by most of our modern teachers. Then so that's the heart's release by love culminating in the beautiful. And then it says the heart's released by compassion. This is the riddle that he gave at the beginning. What is its destination, apex, fruit, and end? When a mendicant develops the heart's release by compassion, together with the awakening factors of mindfulness, investigation, energy, rapture, tranquility, and so on, which rely on seclusion, fade away, and cessation. So they're doing this whole system focused on compassion. And then the maturity of that, and then they develop these five perceptions, perceiving the repulsive and the unrepulsive. Then they may go beyond the perception of form. That's going beyond the first four jhanas. With the ending of perception of impingement, so that the sense contact through the five senses is not happening while one is in this meditation. Not focusing on perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite. They enter and remain in the dimension of infinite space. The apex of the heart's release by compassion is the dimension of infinite space, I say, for a mendicant who's not penetrated to a higher freedom. When I first came across this, I was somewhat thinking, feeling doubtful about this because it's not a particular format that I've seen very often. But the explanation that's given is that compassion is arising when one experiences dukkha, or when one is aware of dukkha. And when you see the danger in this realm of form, which is the danger of rebirth, you see the dukkha of the round of samsara, you see the danger in this form realm, and then mind is able to turn away from form. And the next place it turns to, if one is not obtaining enlightenment, it turns to the infinity of space. It's being like it's an escape from the form world to the infinity of space. It's still not the ultimate goal, but this is what the Buddha is saying is what one can gain with where the meditation on compassion goes to. How is the heart's release by rejoicing developed? What is its destination, apex, and fruit? They do the whole thing. They develop the heart's release through rejoicing. They develop it together with all the awakening factors. They rely on seclusion, fading away, and cessation. They practice the 5 perceptions, perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive, or the asubha. It's not asubha, it's patikula. So it is the repulsive and the unrepulsive. And then they go beyond the dimension of infinite space and become aware that consciousness is infinite. And they enter and remain in the dimension of infinite consciousness. The commentary says that there is a joyful consciousness of beings. Our consciousness itself is like really great. Consciousness is so much fun. It's so great to be conscious, to be aware. So bright, so light. Consciousness, isn't it beautiful? So great. So then there's they associate some kind of natural gladness or natural joyfulness with consciousness, and then this is associated with that realm of consciousness of the so elsewhere I've heard it explained that when you're meditating on infinite space, there is this consciousness, and the consciousness is aware of the infinite space. When you're meditating on form, there is this consciousness, and there is space, and then the space is filled with forms. And so the forms are in the space, but then if you drop the forms away, you see the emptiness of the forms, and the forms drop away, and you just have space. You just have consciousness in space. And then if you drop the space away, and then you just have consciousness. So that's associated with the meditation on joy, or sympathetic joy. And then how is the heart's release by equanimity developed? What is its destination, apex, fruit, and end? They develop the heart's release by equanimity, together with all the awakening factors, relying on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, ripening and letting go. They develop those 5 perceptions about the repulsive and the unrepulsive. And then, if they wish, may I meditate staying equanimous, mindful, and aware, rejecting both repulsive and unrepulsive. That's what they do. And then they can go totally beyond the dimension of infinite consciousness, aware that there is nothing at all, and enter and remain in the dimension of nothingness. This is the apex of the meditation on equanimity for a person who has not realized nibbana. So these meditations with these cosmic dimensions and these immaterial attainments, the Buddha is describing as attainments which are possible for anybody, but can be part of the other systems of practice. But these are not the primary goals or the primary aim of our meditation. So in this case, he's in a certain way showing the limitation of this practice without the unique aspect of the Buddhist wisdom, the Buddhist insight of seeing the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selfless nature of whatever we experience, and becoming disenchanted with that, and turning away from that, turning towards the Nibbana element. So I guess I'll invite comments, but I didn't really find this very last section to be the most thrilling, either as something that's a goal for my personal practice, or else I also do not feel that inspired by taking the other religious systems of the time and sort of like putting them in their place and say, well, they're only going so far, no further. It is true that the Buddha studied with other teachers and he practiced to the highest level of what the other teachers had to teach. And he said, well, does this take me to the end of dukkha? And he found that it didn't. And so then he left those other systems and went on his own quest to discover the way to the end of dukkha. So this last section that I briefly reviewed with you is putting a certain framework on the four Brahmaviharas apart from our path. Our path. We don't have to, it's not even necessary to go to the infinite space, infinite consciousness, or to the pure realized nothingness. One can even get as far as residing in the beautiful of the first jhana. And then upon emerging from the first jhana, one can reflect, this state is conditioned, it's impermanent, it's unsatisfactory. I can't depend on this. If I depend on this, I could be reborn in that cosmic realm and stay there for 60,000 eons, but I still would not have gained my liberation. And then seeing the danger in those states, one develops disenchantment and lets go completely of any clinging to that state, even that beautiful meditation state. And when we let go of everything, then we're able to realize enlightenment. So that's my understanding of this, and I hope it wasn't too confusing. Last thoughts?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this very thoughtful sharing. And yeah, it is kind of like what an anticlimactic, he's ending up on the answer of what the difference was with what where you'll end up if you're not developing the awakening factors. So yeah, instead of coming back to what we're aiming for is what you did, actually.
Right.
But in this, sometimes that's how the suttas, they, are presented,
Right.
Who knows what the Buddha had shared, like completely. That's just that we've been handed down to us. So that's really beautiful, though, to see all those interrelationships and how there's so many supporting factors.
There's also a way to take this as, go for penetrating to the superior liberation. But if you don't get all the way there, you'll end up in a pretty cool place. It just might be for a very long time, but you'll still be cultivating good things. So going through these practices with the Brahmaviharas and the enlightenment factors and the qualities of perception, if you practice the training that's outlined in this sutta, I feel like it's saying, you know, go for the superior liberation, but there's some consolation prizes along the way that aren't, you know, too shabby. So I feel like keep going.
I seeing hands up now with Corinna and Ren. And I'm also noting that I promised you that I was going to go away in 4 minutes from now. So I'm wondering, would you, if I leave this meeting open and if I just disappear and now you have a space of nothingness in where I was before, then I, Suvijana, will be happy to give the closing blessing after the 2 questions are asked and answered, or 2 comments. Is that all right?
Aya, you want to say yes?
Oh, go ahead, please. Go ask away the first person who's in.
Okay, Corinna.
Thank you. You know, for a long time in my practice, I thought of the Brahma Viharas as four separate things. And in meeting with you recently, something really struck me. I'll go back before then and say, you know, people like, for example, the Buddha's bicycle pilgrimage this year, they have the theme of mudita. And so they have a group chat and they're like sharing things on how to cultivate mudita. And when I saw you recently, you know, I love the way you said it, described the Brahma Viharas, and it's kind of like there's metta. And when metta meets suffering, that's how compassion arises. When metta meets wholesome actions in others, that's how mudita arises. And Ayanyanika, it reminds me of what you were saying as far as this embodiment thing and this pervasive thing, that it's not like four separate things. It's really what it's meeting. Yeah. So thank you for that. Maybe I'll say one more thing. Just this, what really makes the Brahma Vihara stand out, or metta stand out, that, you know, it's not just towards our family or our loved ones, but it's to all beings, and just how important this, I am really cultivating an awareness of our perception and being able to see the repulsive in the unrepulsive in the repulsive, etc., and all those things, how all that seems to me to build towards this, just seeing things for how they are and not getting stuck in our perceptions, so that we can cultivate metta towards our enemies, what have you. So
Thank you. That's a good point. It's a really good point. And then Ren has a hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just want to see if I can summarize it for myself, really, so that I can understand the teaching, you know, in a way that I can digest. What I thought I heard was that the last part of what Ayasubana says, that the teaching is to lead with compassion, or and through that understanding through that achieve actual compassion versus like reciting it like a sila. Well, I must lead with compassion, with loving kindness. You know, it's like coming from real understanding, like absorbing within. And the reason that it's not the highest teaching is because that leads you to an infinite space, and ultimately we want to leave that infinite space behind. So I just want to really see if I can summarize it and really own it, because it feels very important to me.
What you're saying is, yes, I think what this sutta is alluding to is like, we're not aiming for infinite space. We're not aiming for infinite consciousness. We're not aiming for the sphere of nothingness. We're aiming for liberation of the heart. And so if you are not bringing in the characteristics and seeing them clearly, you are not getting all the way to the goal that the Buddha had for himself and for those of us who are practicing his path.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's like even like in the Christian religion, compassion, and love thy enemy and all that. So their aim is a heavenly realm, and so so in the time of the Buddha, the Brahma realms, or these exalted realms, but they're impermanent. And then there's the dukkha of wherever we're going to land. Once that karma has exhausted, we're back in samsara, where we haven't left samsara. So that's the gist of it.
Yeah, even the jhanas are a pleasant abiding. They are not the destination.
Mm-hmm. It's so delicate, isn't it? Because if we cling on to that infinite space too much, or at all, then it becomes dukkha, right? And then so if we don't cling on to infinite space, or don't cling on to nothingness, I think I heard, then what is beyond nothingness?
So so we're getting into words now, and descriptions of things, and something that we can't really describe, but the idea is that these realms are not permanent, that they, even if it's like a sublime joy, incredible, seemingly endless, it is going to end, and then we will be back into suffering, the experience of suffering. And then there's even the very subtle suffering that's in those seemingly blissful realms that aren't discernible at the time. But as one progresses, I've heard it also, there's like an idea of a ladder. It's not like we don't want to have the experience of jhana and the bliss that can come from purifying the mind. But if you have a ladder and you start climbing the ladder, each rung you hang on to, you have to let go of to get up to the next. You have to step up to the next. So each step you're having to release the last, move away from the last one. So it isn't like we can't experience these blissful states and that they're prohibited, or we don't want to be. We have to look back and see, once we've exited, if we've had a really exquisite meditation, when we leave it, then we step back and see, oh, this is fading, this is impermanent. And maybe this a little bit of glimmer of clinging, that's this tanha, which is dukkha. Oh, okay. And then we can let it go, but it was just like, so we see the dukkha and we see the impermanence of it, and we could see it's not me or mine. So we really try to, anything that's enjoyable, we can just examine these characteristics, and it'll help us not to cling, and even to see the clinging. Just the awareness of the clinging is developing wisdom. It's developing the Four Noble Truths, the understanding dukkha and seeing the cause of dukkha, and then eventually there's the cessation of dukkha. But so basically, yes.
It's a good summary. Yeah.
I kind of see that the infinite space, whatever that level that was described before, is kind of equivalent to heaven in Christianity. It's like, this is where I could be at peace and be blissed out and forever, and this is what a lot of people strive for. but what Buddha is saying is that we have to let it go too. It's not permanent.
Yeah, we have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
Once the karma is used up, then and we may not even remember it. And likely some of us may have been in those blissful abodes for eons, and this is why we're on the path, and we say, oh, I really don't want to go there again, but we don't know that we have been, but we're saying, okay, I'm this time around, I'm going to do my best to realize nibbana. So
this is so very good. I very much appreciate it. I think that's why it's so challenging for people who are still bound with a lot of ego, such as myself. Say, oh, what the ultimate idea is to not go to some equivalent of heaven or bliss. You know, what's going to happen to my little ego to feel safe and all that, right? I mean, so that's why it's so intricate and so beautiful in that sense. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yeah. So yeah, and don't forget that the Brahma Viharas are, and this teaching is taught as a basis for the awakening factors, a supporting element, and
So
they're very
don't
joyful.
neglect them.
They're joyful states. So you're going to have to experience some joy along the way, whether you want to or not. Anyway, so I see Aranya Bodhi. Someone from Aranya Bodhi is there. Do they want to show themselves, or are they wishing to stay anonymous? They've disappeared.
No,
they're in the dark. Oh, it's Ayya Kachayana, and who is in the back there?
Dhammanusari, and we're trying to avoid bandwidth issues, so we've been having our camera off, but yes, we've been here.
Oh, I'm glad to see you. So happy to see you. Yes.
Good to see you. Yes. Appreciate you joining and leading and everything today.
Oh, we didn't really lead. Sobana did all the work, but we just chimed in.
Taking over at the end.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess we should go, and we'll just lead as Sobana had said into the closing chant. So we can turn towards the altars if you have one. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivade Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ayya. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see all of you too.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you, Ayya.
Could I ask a question for Aranya Bodhi? If you, okay.